CityCast listeners dig us because our vibe is more conversation and less interview. We know and love talking about DC to help you get the most out of it. Well, Eagle Bank is no different. Their friendly personnel know all about personal banking and are ready to help you maximize your finances. And business owners enjoy tailored solutions from dedicated bankers who can help navigate complex business challenges, all with the friendly Eagle Bank vibe. Visit them today at eaglebankcorp.com.
Today on CityCast DC, it's DC Parks Week, sponsored by Casey Trees. It's a week of coverage celebrating DC's green spaces. The Washington Post is making news. We've got James Beard Award winners in our own backyard, and we get an update on the ultimate parks quest. And Limpert from Washingtonian and Jacob Fenston are here to get into all of it. Today is Friday, June 14th. I'm interim executive producer Julia Karen, and here's what DC's talking about. Hey, y'all, how you doing?
Good. Hi, Julia.
Great. Hey. All right. So I want to start off with some news that I imagine you all saw this week, which was a scoop that Janae Deal from Axios nabbed. So shout out to Janae, where Will Lewis, the new CEO of the Washington Post, essentially is looking to pivot the paper to doing something called Local Plus, which would be a bigger focus on Metro news stories and also offering readers who want to pay extra, premium local content. I feel like this is a big pivot from what the Post used to do. No, wasn't it supposed to be like, we want to be an international paper? What do you all think about that?
I'm a little skeptical that it's any kind of big pivot because it sounds to me like trying to do more with less, like they just did these buyouts last year and said goodbye to a lot of longtime local reporters. So this sounds like it's trying to like squeeze a little bit of money out of readers, but not really spend a lot of money on gathering local news. But what do I know? It's very, very few details so far.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Do you think that they'll maybe hire more Metro reporters or give them more power? Or what do we think is going to happen in terms of actually expanding the Metro newsroom? Do we think that's a possibility?
I mean, it seems like whatever they're doing is really focused on just making more money. Last year, they lost $77 million, I read. So I think, they're just scrambling to make things work financially.
Right.
I don't know how local... I mean, I should ask you, Julia, how's it going over there at CityCast DC? Because it seems like people have had trouble, making a lot of money off of local news lately.
That's fair. I mean, that's part of the reason we have a membership program, not to plug, but also to plug, right? Like the whole point is, part of the view is that people pay for stuff that they find is important. And in terms of the Washington Post, I feel like there's also this bigger meta question of what is the Post supposed to be? Is it supposed to be this international paper that is trying to compete with the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal and is probably going to end up in third place just because the Times and the Wall Street Journal have that bigger baked in maybe audience internationally? Or is the Post trying to also be at the same time a local paper? Is the whole point that yes, the focus is somewhat international because DC happens to be where politics happens, but really we want to be a local paper? I think that's a big time existential question that the Post has been grappling with for years.
Well, I think they answered that question years ago, honestly. I mean, I moved to DC 15 years ago, and back then they had bureaus in all the suburbs. They had a network of literal physical office buildings in places all over the region. And it seems completely implausible that sort of investment in local reporting would return in any real way. But I totally welcome a beefed up newsletter with with more local content. That would be awesome. But it just doesn't feel like, they can go back in that direction and make money off of it.
I mean, there's a chasm, now that DC is just gone. Twitter is not what it was for, just gathering little tidbits of local news. But yeah, local, you need boots on the ground. It's not, so I think, yeah, a lot of it's going to come down to whether they are going to hire more people.
Journalism is expensive.
Yeah, as it turns out, paying people to go talk to other people, which is essentially what we do, right? Like that costs a fair amount of money. I also find it interesting that this comes at a time when like Lewis is at the center of a pretty big-ish controversy. He has to win back the newsroom's trust. Sally Busby, who was the original CEO, like jumped ship basically a week ago. And so he is basically facing some revolt after a New York Times report came out that he clashed with Busby over the paper's coverage of this involvement in a British phone hacking lawsuit. And this also gets to an existential question of like, what is journalism supposed to be? Is it supposed to be that you pay for information, or is it you just kind of weed through it yourself? I had a professor in graduate school who said that if you received a bottle of water, that's a bribe, right? And that's a difference between British paper standards. Will Lewis is British. Actually, it's Sir Will Lewis, fun fact, and America's kind of standards. Do you guys think he'll be able to like thread that needle of gaining his newsroom's trust back amid kind of all of that?
I don't know. I think it has not been a great week for optics for Will Lewis. So I think he's got like a tough road, but I don't have a beat on what's going on internally.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I thought it was funny that he tried to basically like bribe David Folkenflik at NPR, which is like, you're speaking to a media reporter who covers this industry and who, in theory is very steeped on the ethics of journalism. You're trying to sort of like, the story that David wrote was that Will Lewis had offered him an exclusive interview in exchange for basically not writing a critical story, which in American journalism is a big no-no. I guess in the UK it's okay, but I just thought it was kind of funny that you would do that with a person who reports on the media. And yeah, not great optics.
Yeah, for sure. Also, I feel like doing that to David Folkenflik, who I feel like we all know as like very smart, very with it reporter. I wonder, like that targeting feels so weird to me. I don't know. It just gives me the ick. Again, that's American journalism standards too, but
I guess if you're coming from a another sort of ethical framework in the United Kingdom, maybe that conversation made a lot more sense, but I don't know.
Hey DC, let's talk trees. We all know planting trees is one of the best ways to take care of our environment, our community, and our health. They combat climate change, cool our city, clean our air and water, improve our physical and mental health, bring our communities together. I mean, the list goes on and on. But what if we don't have any inhabitable space for trees? What if, in order to save our trees, we first need to save the soil in which those trees are planted? KC Trees is a local nonprofit working to conserve DC's green spaces and nearby nature that makes our city so great to live in. Visit kctrees.org to learn more about how to protect our green spaces and natural areas.
Speed into success. Learn French. Much like a high-speed train, Alliance Française's immersive French language classes propel you towards fluency. Unlock a world of personal and professional possibilities when you become a member and learn French at the renowned Alliance Française chapter in DC. Tradition and modernity intertwine, offering you an unparalleled learning experience that includes language classes, cultural events, and the only French loan library in the Mid-Atlantic region. Embrace the language that bridges cultures and enriches your resume. The summer season starts on July 6th, so enroll today. All ages and levels are welcome. If you sign up by June 13th, you get $20 off the tuition fee. Find our French classes and more at www.francedc.org. The summer session starts on July 6th, so enroll today.
Okay, in much more fun news, Anne,
Yes.
You are one of DC's resident food coverage experts, and the James Beard Awards were this week. We came home with some hardware. Tell us all about it.
Totally. Yeah, no, it was a great year for DC. So the James Beard Awards are split into national and local, like regional categories. DC typically is relegated to like the best chef mid-Atlantic category, which is like not nothing slouchy. But these national categories, which are like, if you compare it to the Oscars, it's the equivalent of like Best Actor, Best Picture. DC took home 2 of those. Masako Morishita from Perry's won Best Emerging Chef. And that is a category that if you look at past winners, they often go on to win. Outstanding Chef, which is another award that we took home. It was won by Michael Rafiti, who runs Albi, the Levantine restaurant in Navy Yard. And then we also got Best Chef Mid-Atlantic, which is great. I mean, that's usually a Philly versus DC category with maybe like sometimes some Baltimore and New Jersey competition sprinkled in. But that was actually won by Harley Pete, a restaurant called Bav Rouge in Easton, Maryland, which was, kind of a surprise. So it was a very exciting night. My cold food critic heart actually got very teary.
Oh, yeah. I have not been to Perry's, which is where Masako Morishita works, which I feel like is a mea culpa on my part. I've heard the food is fabulous, but I've been to Albi multiple times. I feel like, and this is insider baseball, I feel like the move at Albi is you go to the area, you ask to sit at the bar, which is what I've done routinely, and then you just wait. And eventually you get to see, I don't think I've actually sat down at that restaurant for a real meal. I think I've only sat at the bar and been able to.
It's very hard to get into that restaurant for a real meal.
And now it's going to be a lot harder. But one thing I found really, really interesting was when they both won these awards, Masako's line about this was, it was her wildest American dream come true. She's a former Washington football team cheerleader turned chef. That story is wild to me.
Oh, yeah.
And Michael Rafiti said the only thing he could think about was his Palestinian grandparents and mother, and that the award was dedicated to the people of Palestine.
Yeah.
Generally. Immigrants doing work. Wild.
Masako is so interesting. So, yeah, as you mentioned, she was a former Commander's cheerleader. She tried out on a total lark. She didn't think she was going to get it. She wound up getting it, staying for 5 years. She became captain. While she was captain, she was bringing she was cooking Japanese curry and bringing it to the cheerleading potlucks and was like, hey, maybe I'd like to do this next. She's in her mid-40s. She's only been at...
best potluck person ever.
Yeah,
oh my God.
Totally. But she's only been at Perry's for 2 years.
Yeah.
I mean, and before that, she did some pop-ups, but that's really remarkable.
Yeah, it is wild how good these people can get in that short amount of time. Jacob, have you eaten any of the food at Albi or Perry's?
No.
Any reviews?
I've wanted to go to Albi, and now I sort of hate these awards and all the best of lists, because now it's it makes it 10 times more impossible to get into. So thank you, James Beard Awards. But I have been to Perry's not since the relatively new chef was there, but it's I like that. I like seeing an older restaurant, even though it's a newer chef. I like seeing an older restaurant recognized, because I feel like it's often the new places that get all the buzz, and I just think it's cool that sort of an older neighborhood establishment gets that sort of a nod.
Yeah, for sure.
And all the more remarkable that she was able to take a restaurant that's 40 years old that people know for drag brunches and the rooftop and make it a foodie destination.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like we're doing an existential question in each kind of tier that we're talking about. What does this say about DC's food scene generally? Have we established ourselves as a food destination now? I don't think we're ever going to be New York, but in terms of climbing the ranks, and where do you think we are now?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I think DC has long had this inferiority complex that we've never gotten the recognition that we deserve. But I think that that's definitely changed. Although if you look at the Beards, if you talk about these national awards, we've won maybe, 5 of them in the last 20 years. Last year we won Outstanding Chef, Rob Rubba from Oyster won. And then this year Michael Rafiti got it. So that's pretty remarkable. So I think that we're getting the respect that we deserve. And I think that the kinds of places that are being rewarded here, especially this year and last year, are far different than the ones which were, mostly European, all white male chefs. That was really what dominated the last 20 years. So it's nice to see those places getting recognized. I, honestly, if you had not shown me any nominees and asked me who should be Outstanding Chef from DC, I would have said Michael Rafiti.
I mean, yes. The food.
I mean, he's incredible.
The food is insane. It's so, I dream about the meat on the sword.
I know, that lamb barbecue. Oh, I know.
Absurd. Jacob, we're taking you at some point.
You got to go.
Yeah.
Sounds great.
Okay, So this week is sponsored by Casey Trees, and I feel like we would be remiss if we didn't get an update on Jacob's Parks Quest. Jacob, how many parks are you at as of this recording?
163 out of, the number keeps growing, but it's around 700.
Do you have a new favorite that you have gone to recently?
New favorite. So I've decided like it's not really fair to compare, there's apples and there's oranges in this whole thing. So there's some really great like tiny triangle parks and there's some really great bigger parks. There's parks for like every different purpose and need. But one of my favorite places I've been to so far is the Frederick Douglass House, the National Historic Site in Anacostia. And I had been to the site, like I'd been around there many times, but I'd never been inside the house itself, which is just really cool. It's like such, it's really preserved beautifully. After Douglass's death in the late 1800s, it was his wife and then, sort of generations of Black women preserved the house until the National Park Service acquired it in the 1960s. So his stuff is in there, his coat rack, his like bed where he slept. Like it's just really cool to see how he lived in this house and was just part of such important history after the Civil War and during Reconstruction.
Yeah, I was going to say, I am a bad DC civilian. I have not been to the Frederick Douglass House. And have you been? And can you give me an update? You've not either? We got to go.
I know. I would love to.
It's a neat spot. And it's up on this hill. Like you have a really beautiful view. You can see, I like now that you can see the Frederick Douglass Memorial Bridge from the Frederick Douglass House, which is kind of cool, like to think about the way the city has embraced him as sort of a symbol in recent years.
Got it. Generally, we've counted all of these different parks as like, some of them are just like patches of land. So like Jacob, like to you, what even is a park if Park Service counts just like a patch of grass? Like what do you define a park as in that instance? I feel like you're the expert.
Well, I'm not going to define the parks because that would take me like longer than visiting them all. I could spend defining them. So I'm just using this map and this list that the Trust for Public Lands has come up with. They have compiled data from a bunch of different sources. But basically, the reason we have all these weird little parks is, when they laid out the city as this planned city that, Pierre L'Enfant drew up in the 1700s, all those diagonal streets created lots of funny triangles, circles, squares, and then, our bigger parks. But so a lot of, as you mentioned, like a lot of the parks are tiny triangles. Some of them are just like literally concrete triangles in between streets. Those are fun. But yeah, some of this is just like, popping into a small grassy triangle, taking a picture, noting that there's nothing else there and moving on and trying to do it as quickly as I can. And then other parks are, I'll spend a long time there and really try to get the feel for it.
I feel like one qualifier to being a park is you must have grass. Like not AstroTurf, not concrete. Like you must be able to touch grass,
Touch grass. Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think one thing that has been cool is also to see like some triangle parks that are very small are really neat and have been really beautifully landscaped and designed, sometimes by neighbors that have created kind of gardens, interesting landscaping, and then other times by city officials. But there's some up in kind of Ward 4 that were redesigned by DC Water as part of efforts to capture stormwater. So they have these like neat rain gardens that are designed into these little triangles. So you can do a lot with a little space. And yes, preferably there is some grass or other plant life.
And got a favorite park, pocket park, patch of grass, perhaps?
I tend to go where the flowers are. I love the Arboretum during the azalea season. Dumbarton Oaks. I also have a 7-year-old, so I definitely am like a splash park girl these days. Petworth, Tacoma.
Yeah, I was going to say, Jacob, do they qualify splash parks as parks too, or not so much?
Yeah, I mean, most of the splash parks are within other larger parks, with playgrounds and stuff.
All right. And before we go, we've got a Casey Trees tip. This is the last one of the week. You might have heard our tip about local plants, but if you're itching to have the most impact, plant an oak tree. They support more life forms than any North American tree genus and have the greatest ecological impacts for our region. Head to caseytrees.org/free to get an oak tree planted for free. Free oak trees, guys.
Now,
Big deal.
Woo.
I will say I actually did get an oak tree planted by Casey Trees in my front yard, and then it died. But if it dies within 2 years, I think they'll come and replace it for free. But we had other oak trees in the meantime sprout up, and so now we've just decided to leave those. But oak trees are awesome. We have a red oak and a white oak that are growing.
Nice. Jacob, and let's do this again sometime. Maybe over the sword meat kebab at Albi.
Let's do it.
Yes.
That is all for today here on CityCast DC. Our interim executive producers are me, Julie Karen, and Kayla Cote-Stemmerman. Kayla also writes our super informative and fun newsletter, Hey DC. You should go subscribe to it. Our interim producer is Ash Durbin, and one of our producers is Elizabeth Kama, and our hosts are Bridget Todd and Michael Schaefer from Politico. Music is by Alex Roldan. If you enjoyed the show, why not tell a friend, rate the show, leave us a review, and subscribe to our morning newsletter. We'll be back Monday morning with more news from around the city. Bye. I'm so sweaty, guys. Holy smokes. It's so hot.